As we've heard, the pace of economic inequality has increased dramatically over the past few decades, and many have made this point. Mr. Higgins brought data that I think points to this really stark dichotomy that we've seen increased inequality over the last several decades, and that this administration continues to push policies that further reduce support for those families that are struggling. And it has been discussed here already, the Republican tax bill gave even more advantage to the wealthiest Americans and to the largest corporations in the United States, and overlooked the needs of working families as we continually see greater income inequality. The Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a refundable credit for low-wage workers, and the Child Tax Credit are two very significant ways we can help families start to get ahead. And in fact, just listening to the debate here today and the conversation, I appreciate the enthusiasm that I've heard from some of my colleagues on the other side for the expansion of the Child Tax Credit. I couldn't agree with them more. I invite them to sign on to my legislation, but I find it difficult to fully accept that enthusiasm when they were given the opportunity to make permanent those provisions, which I think were not enough anyway. For example, they could have made it fully refundable, didn't do that. They could have made them permanent, didn't do that. The provisions that they did include, as modest as they were, expire in 2025. But what happened to the provisions for wealthy corporations? They were made permanent. So not only is a budget a statement of our values, but our tax policy is a statement of our values as well. If this is such a high priority, why did you set it to end for hardworking families and only get a modest break, and then give a massive break, a permanent break, to wealthy corporations? So, one question, if I could just pose to Dr. Boucher and also Dr. Spriggs. Number one, did those provisions actually do anything when you look at the totality of the 2017 tax bill? Did those modest temporary provisions do anything to increase income equality in this country, or did the totality of that tax bill actually take us in the opposite direction?
Well, in the totality, it moved us in the opposite direction. And I certainly commend your leadership on the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit, and that we do need to make that fully refundable. Proponents claim that the new tax law would boost wages, but there's been no evidence that has been directly responsible. One of the things that we did see, of course, is that corporations used that tax windfall for a record $1 trillion plus in stock buybacks in 2018. That is that is a really big number of income that is going to those at the very, very top in exchange for a long-term gap in revenue for the United States to make the investments that we need to make in people and families. So I think especially over the long term, this is really just pushing us exactly in the wrong direction on multiple levels.
Dr. Spriggs?
First, thank you for representing my wife's hometown of Flint in Genesee County. So
she's a Flintstone. You chose well.
I moved up. So there is an inequality tax that low-income people pay because they don't provide enough of the market to drive where prices go. When you exacerbate the big share of the market, you add more demand at the wrong end. So the price of childcare goes up as inequality goes up, because that's where the market is. And so, yes, you gave a tax credit, but then it gets taken away with increased cost of child care. So when you look at earnings gains that have been made, those who are middle income and the next one lower are finding the burdens increasing during this entire expansion, because housing costs, child care costs, education costs have all gone up faster than their earnings, because the earnings at the top are going up faster and the prices are following those earners. And the earned income tax credit excludes single people.
Right.
They are currently being taxed into poverty, and the Working Families Tax Bill, which corrects the earned income tax credit excluding these workers and fixes the issue that the tax credit should be fully refundable, are important steps to restore the balance that's in that bill. And as you pointed out, if corporations need a permanent cut, working people need a permanent cut.